Back to another episode of And So the Mind Reels podcast and or vlog, depending upon which format you're watching this in. As you remember or recall, if you are even aware, last episode I mentioned some foreign films. I had some recommendations for creativity and expanding your mind to another part of the world and how people tell stories and shoot movies. And you may not be familiar with that. And I like to imagine that somewhere someone may have said, in the comments, but they didn't just, let's imagine they did. Let's be creative here. And imagine they said, hey, that's great. You got the films there from France and your Italy and your Japan. But what about the American films, brother? What about the good USA? What about our directors out there in Hollywood and elsewhere? Well, okay, chill. I got you. I got some. There is just as many great films that were made here in the United States that actually, influence some of the foreign films that I recommended the last time, and vice versa. There are some foreign films that influence some of the American directors, and we'll take a look at just a slight handful. These are just kind of some nuggets that I pulled out of my collection, in no particular order of greatness or otherwise. Let's just get right into it. Let's go really Americana here and do John Ford with John Wayne, The Searchers. I mean, you can't get more Americana than this, and this is kind of the Western that set the standard in a sense, in a lot of ways. It's John Wayne, Ward Bond, Natalie Wood when she was very young, and John Wayne has to search, basically hence the title, to find Natalie Wood, who was kidnapped early in her life, and it all turns out well. No spoiler alert. They find her, but just how they do and how they go about it is great, and it has the iconic framing of the door with John Wayne standing out in the landscape that a lot of people have stolen. If you see it in this film, you'll see other films. You go, there's the Searchers. There's the Searcher shot. So highly recommend John Ford, John Wayne, any John Ford, John Wayne, going back to Stagecoach, etc., is worth your time. But this is the penultimate Western by which all others are graded. That's not true. It sounded good. Okay, now let's turn to another icon, and we'll do Francis Ford Coppola, of course, The Godfather. I saw this when it first came out when I was a little kid back in 1972 and begged my mother to take me to go see it, and she did. And I've probably watched this movie maybe every year since. I've even taken some film classes where we studied a lot of shots in here, shot by shot, and I got to see some of the inside of what Coppola did in order to make this. In fact, now, this is not a plug, it's just letting you know, on Paramount Plus, they have this film called The Offer, which was based on the production of this movie and how it all came to be, and some of the behind-the-scenes things that they went through with the actual American crime families and getting this film made. It's a wonderful kind of big backstory on this, and makes you want to watch this again, like 2 times a year now instead of just one. Staying with Coppola, and we'll move on to we've done American crime and Westerns, so now let's go to war. Coppola's Apocalypse Now. Again, I saw this when it first came out, and just an amazing, as a friend of mine described it, you want to know what an acid trip is like, it's this film. Also, I was involved with a theater group who did a performance piece based on some letters that were written during Vietnam, a piece called Dispatches, and others were gathered. And we took our performance piece, our little theatrical performance, to perform in front of some Vietnam veterans. And one of the actresses at the time asked one of the veterans, "So, what was it like being in Vietnam?" Yeah, cringe. And he responded, well, the movie Apocalypse Now. You go into a cinema feeling all good and normal, and the lights go down. You sit there in the dark, and your mind totally gets messed up for 2.5 hours, and then the lights come up, and it's time to go home and be normal now. And that's what it was like being in Vietnam. It's time to go home and be normal now after your mind's been totally messed up with. So This film depicts war, of course, based on the Joseph Conrad novel, Heart of Darkness. This is Francis Ford Coppola's interpretation of that novel and his kind of statement on Vietnam. I just recommend watching it. Just know that it's really going to leave an impression on you. Now let's move to comedy and some of my favorite contemporary directors, writers, and that is the Coen brothers. One of the first films I ever saw by them, Raising Arizona, Nicolas Cage, Holly Hunter, John Goodman. Wonderfully funny movie. I remember the first time I saw it, I was just astounded insofar as like, my gosh, this is like a comic book on screen. Just the dialogue. But once you get used to their dialogue and their sense of humor, it's another, I watch this film quite frequently. That's why I own a copy, so I don't have to wait for it to come around on the TV. I don't know where that accent came from. Sorry, I think it was Holly Hunter in this film. But I always had this bit that I wanted to do at one time to write, where a character is eating supper or dinner and smoking a cigarette at the same time. And I saw this film, and John Goodman actually does it in this film. Great bit. I don't know him personally, though he is from St. Louis and actually grew up in Afton, where I grew up. We never met, and he did not steal that bit from me, though I would like to think that he did, and he thought it was funny, and he used it in this movie, but it's really not true. Raising Arizona, funny comedy, caper, escape from prison, running from the law, love story, essentially, if I can encapsulate that. Now, sticking with the crime, let's go to Mr. Kubrick, and we're not going to do Clockwork Orange, though that is one of my favorites. Paths of Glory, which was another one. Spartacus, Lolita. There's tons of Kubrick. Dr. Strangelove, another one of my favorites. I'm just going to go all the way back to the beginning and The Killing with Sterling Hayden, who was also in The Godfather. Sterling Hayden, this is a caper, noir, gritty, crime telling about some guys who are doing a heist during a horse race, essentially. And it has a wonderful cast. You can really see Stanley Kubrick learning his chops, learning positioning of the camera, directing of the actors, getting what he wanted out of that. This is where he really started, and you can really see him coming into his own as a director, doing a noir type film. If you really like those type of things, you like gritty crime, city, night, heist, type things, The Killing by Kubrick, I highly recommend. Of course, you can go with Arthur Penn, Bonnie and Clyde, Faye Dunaway, Warren Beatty, Bonnie and Clyde, Michael J. Pollard, Gene Hackman are in this. It's a wonderful kind of retelling, I guess loosely based on the actual Bonnie and Clyde. Typical 70s crime genre at that time, where you had your Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, those types of movies, The Wild Bunch with Peckinpah, the slow motion, death scenes at the end with the ambush, the slow motion thing going on. This kind of epitomizes a collection of all of that coming together in this film. Some great performances and some great writing, great cinematography, great storytelling all the way around. Even though if you're familiar with Bonnie and Clyde in the real life and you know what's going to happen, it's worth just watching to watch it, someone's interpretation and getting it done. Now, getting back into the Americana, the good old USA type films, I think this is what we're really famous for, and this influenced a lot of French directors that I covered in the last one, like Goddard and Melville and Truffaut, and John Huston, The Asphalt Jungle. This is another noir caper, wonderful film. Some great performances in here as well. John Huston's kind of like first foray, and also, if you'll notice a little actress over here, Marilyn Monroe. This was her first film, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. She's in it very briefly, but it was her first, break into cinema. And it's really worth checking out. The storytelling, again, it's another one of those, if you like the caper, nighttime, gritty city type deal, here you go right there. The Asphalt Jungle. Now, take a breath, everyone, shall we? And clear our minds. And let's go into comedy. Here, there's a juxtaposition for you. Let's go right to the big ones. Marx Brothers, okay? Night at the Opera. These guys kind of really expanded comedy. Opened the doors for, doing asides, doing improv, doing ad-libs. You can watch one of their films probably 100 times and catch something every time you watch it. And, I have. It's just like I watched this. Well, I didn't hear that line before. I didn't hear that aside before. Talk about breaking the fourth wall and not really kind of, giving a care about what was going on, establishment or anti-establishment wise. These guys really epitomized comedy, just expanding what you could do and what you could get away with and what you could say and what you could look like, or even in Harpo's case, not say, just make noise. And Marx Brothers forays the pioneers of comedy in my book. Now, this next one is just going to be a little controversial because this gentleman, I believe, was canceled. But I have to say, when I was very young and in high school, I used to listen to a friend of mine had this album called The Nightclub Years by Woody Allen, and I used to listen to it, and I memorized quite a few routines of his. And when this came out, Annie Hall in 1970, whatever it was, I think it won Best Picture. I went to see it and hated it. I thought, this is the dumbest. I don't know what's going on. It's jumping around. They're breaking the fourth wall. He's got subtitles. He's got all these things going on. And it wasn't until, I started taking film classes and learning about film and Bergman and Fellini and these different people, and then going back and watching this again, going, oh my gosh, I get it now. I get what he was doing in this, insofar as the narrative and the storytelling and the way it kind of jumped around and it broke the fourth wall and was very expressionistic, and the humor, my gosh, the humor in this, it had me laughing. And again, say what you will, but he was a big influence, and this was a great film. I have to admit, though, I have watched it again recently, and his characters, neuroses and New Yorkness kind of gets on your nerves after a while, and that's not one I return to very much anymore, because not that I've canceled him, just that he gets kind of annoying after a while. And let's end on this note, the genius that is Charlie Chaplin in modern times. I saw this at a local cinema when I was a kid. My mom took me to see this, and this is the last incarnation of the Little Tramp, of whom Charlie Chaplin was noted for, this character. And this is not really, I would say, a silent film, even though he does not speak, and it's kept the silent kind of genre going. There is sound in it. There are other people say things, and you can hear them. But it's the last time that the Little Tramp appeared. He walks off in the sunset, of course, at the end. Paulette Goddard, I probably just butchered the crap out of her name, is in this. And it was really kind of it's funny. The bits that are in this, my gosh, are hysterical. It's really kind of Charlie Chaplin's commentary on modern society at the time. Of course, this was made with automation coming into being and factories and things happening, and kind of modern times taking over the old ways, even taking over the Little Tramp, as it were, and sound, coming into cinema now, and you had to speak and you had to make noise, and it's kind of an allegory of what was going on with Chaplin, and he does a beautiful job of telling the story. So there you go. Those are kind of my picks for some American movies. Just kind of covered the crime, Western, war, and comedy. It's kind of the backbones. And those films and those directors were influenced by some foreign films that I talked about last week. And actually some of those foreign film directors were influenced by these Americans, the John Hustons and the John Fords. Even Coppola probably was influenced by Fellini, and Fellini by, it's a fair exchange. Somebody does some kind of incredible shot, like from like a Hitchcock using the let's zoom in and dolly back at the same time as Martin Balsam falls down the steps in Psycho, and then Spielberg picks it up and uses it in Jaws, and then each person would watch someone else do something and just it would open their mind to, oh wow, what a great idea for a shot, or setting up the shot, or telling the story, or revealing some kind of exposition of this character. We can do it this way. Everybody learned from everybody, and though these films that I showed you today and the ones from the last are all kind of the backbone of what can be done, how things can be expanded, how minds can be opened, and just not your typical storytelling. That's usually what I look at. If I can guess within 5 minutes how this thing's going to end, it's not for me. A lot of these, I had no idea where they were going, and they enriched me. So there you go. Those are my picks for classic American films. I recommend all of those. I'll link them below. I don't know why people point when they do that. I know where below is. And I highly recommend you check out these or the ones I did in the last one. So until next time, hopefully these will make your mind real. See, because it's a movie and it's a real, and it's not a dad joke. Really, I wasn't trying to do that, but it looks like I did. Sorry, everyone. Okay, you can go now. You turn it off if you want. That's fine. I don't care.